Hello and welcome to this edition of the Weekly Dose, Challenge Your Perspective. This is Patrick Dare in Washington, D.C. If there's any doubt, if you've ever had any doubt that Kenya is regenerating to a period that we all wish to have forgotten, then you must just look at what has happened in the last 1 week. We are fast deteriorating to 50 years ago, where Kenya began. This regime of the Jubilee government is acting exactly like the government of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta after we got our independence. There was a purge. The police was used to brutalize people. Those in opposition were picked up and detained and restricted in the movement because he needed to consolidate his powers and therefore his dictatorship, the one-party state. We may not be there yet, but all signs point there. The inauguration of the people's president, Honorable Right MP Prime Minister, now President Raila Amolo Odinga, on the 30th, was a decision that was created by the people. I don't think Raila would have escaped to be sworn in if he wanted to. The people want this. And it's because the people see that there is injustice. Their votes did not count. The August 8th election should have been an election that would have shown this country that we are headed in the right direction. But instead, it did not. As we've known, election after election after election, the right person does not win. Maybe with the exception of 2002 when Mwai Kibaki was endorsed by Raila Odinga, the Kibaki Tosha. And the whole country came out. Moi could not do anything. He knew he had to go home. He knew his trying to install Uhuru on the people was never going to work. And it did not work. The multitude of people that came out to vote was totally overwhelming. And Moi did the right thing. He went home and handed over power peacefully. At the time, everybody would have told you that Kenya is headed in the right direction. But that was not to be long. Soon after that, Mwai gets sworn in the next election at night because he knew he did not win that election. In 2013, that election was not won by Uhuru Kenyatta. But the Supreme Court decided to throw out the case without hearing it. In 2017, the Supreme Court was brave enough and nullified the election. And we went back to another one that was completely a sham election. I was watching my friend and my namesake, PLO, on a program where he was being interviewed. And his position was that if Raila was sworn in, it would be treasonable. It was against the law. I beg to differ. I'm not a lawyer. But garbage in, garbage out. Period. If the argument is that the swearing in of Raila Odinga was against the Constitution and that it is unlawful, and that the Constitution must be respected at every level, then the second election after the nullification by the Supreme Court should not have happened at all. And we know what happened after the nullification. We know that the president threatened the Supreme Court justices. We know that they were under house arrest not to make decisions that would have been within the law. So don't tell us about the Constitution and respect of law and tell us that you believe Uhuru won the second time around. Because it was under that election, whatever it was done after all the laws had been broken, after the Constitution was thrown to the dogs. We are headed back 50 years ago. And yet, everybody, those that would help direct this country, are quiet. Images like this, images of the police getting into people's houses by force, breaking into Miguna's house. These are not images that should happen in a democratic state where the rule of law is respected. If there is an arrest warrant, that warrant must be served in a proper and accordance with the law. Not damage people's property, not take them as if they have an army that would resist. The NRM is not an army. It's a movement of the people, by the people, to try and free themselves from this regression to a dictatorship. If we do not watch out, this kind of images will be very common. Remember how the police stormed into Mr. Wanjigi's home. The same style. The same style. What is to prevent them to do this over and over under the pretext of a warrant issued by a magistrate that could care less how it was served, how this warrant was served? So Mr. PLO, don't tell us that this election, that this president is a legitimate president, that Uhuru Kenyatta is legitimate. He is not. You can see by the throngs of people that went to Uhuru Park enthusiastic to see the leader that they recognize to be sworn in. Somebody said, and I'll quote here, that, let me just find it out quickly, that during the persecution of the Jews, they came for the trade unionists and they were silent. They came for the socialists, for the communists, and they were silent. The people were silent. And then they came for those that had been silent, and by that time it was too late. This was by Mr. Martin Niemöller. He was a pastor. First they came for the socialists and they did not speak up. They came for the communists and they did not speak up. Those right now, the lawyers in Kenya who are not speaking up, the journalists in Kenya who did not speak up when the police was brutalizing people in Kisumu, in Migori, now they're coming for you. They've closed down your media. What are you going to do? You didn't speak up at the time. Those that are church leaders that are not speaking up, that did not speak up, they will come for you when you finally try to speak up. And that's where we are headed. Where a government can decide to come for you, and because many did not speak up, many were silent. And now this government will come for you. The media is still closed. They're using every tactic to undermine the rights of individual Kenyans, of politicians, of lawyers. Who next? We know that the dictatorship always go for the media because that's where the people get informed. That is where the people get informed. I got to listen to this audio about generational thinkers. It's about a Ghanaian man that comes back to Ghana from where he had gone to seek employment. He comes back with one seed of cocoa and plants it. And year after year, there is continued increase from this one seed. And many, many years later, Ghana is now the world top exporter of cocoa. He was a generational thinker. It did not benefit him. But what he did has generated employment and economy for Ghana. The point of it was, from this narrator, was that we need generational thinkers who do not necessarily think about themselves. That wherever they leave when they're gone should benefit the next generation. Whatever they do now, we must do with the image of what it will be for the next generation. There's no question in my mind that what the Jubilee government has done is in line with generational thinking. They're not going to leave this country any better. In fact, they're going to leave it worse. The space, the democratic space, has been a long, hard-fought war. The Prime Minister, the President of the people, has suffered detention, torture, all these years, primarily because he wanted democratic space for Kenyans, a free Kenyan. The Constitution was formed so that it strengthens the freedom and the free space for all Kenyans. That no Kenyan in any corner of the country should be marginalized. And yet, since independence, the two communities where the leaders have come from, these leaders have marginalized the rest of the country. Nobody can convince me that what Uhuru Kenyatta has done and his Jubilee government, what William Ruto has done and his Jubilee government, what the Jubilee members of parliament, with their silence, what they have done, nobody can convince me that they're generational thinkers. They're thinking for now. What is it in for them right now? And they could care less if the country goes to the dogs. They could care less just because somebody else's door is being broken down by force, by the police. They could care less because they see that person as disturbing the peace, disturbing the government where they can get whatever they get, they can nyanyasa it and they can steal from it. The corruption can go on. We need generational thinkers to leave this country a better place. And I am convinced that the likes of Kalonzo being with Raila, the likes of Mudavadi being with Raila, the likes of Wetangula, and yes, there's doubt as to what happened to them during that swearing in. Did they chicken out? There is that going around. But in my books, that was a risk management. You don't put all your eggs in the open when you know that there's a hawk around. The danger that they faced that day, nobody knew what was going to happen. They could have put themselves all in danger being in the same place. If I was advising them, I would have said, stay away. Some of the principles needed to stay away. But that's just me. When you look at risk management, that's part of it. There's no doubt in my mind that what has transpired with NASA principles, with Raila Amolo Odinga, is a generational thinking. Will he leave this country a better country in terms of democracy? And for the rest of us, we must do what we need to do to help this country move forward. For me, is to make you think. I'm challenging your perspective. Where do you stand today? And what are you doing today that will help tomorrow, the generations of tomorrow? We must encourage those who will sacrifice for the better of tomorrow. And we cannot cherry pick when the law applies and when the law does not apply. It must be applied evenly. The Constitution should have been respected in the first place, and we'd not be here. The election should have been held in the most transparent way, not after the chairman himself said he could not assure Kenyans of a free and fair election 6 days to go. We have to have generational thinkers. Leave behind. The narrator talks about even the most minute things. If you go to a buffet, don't eat like there's nobody behind you. You must leave something for people that are coming behind you. If you go to a gathering and you use things within that, you have a water bottle, don't throw it on the floor. Don't Don't throw it on the ground. Minute things, but they are generational thinking. And therefore, my challenge to you, Kenyans, is we cannot let Kenya degenerate back to the 50s, go back, because to do that is to take us in a bad place where the police can do whatever they want to do. The government can do whatever they want to do. And next time they'll come for you. Right now you may celebrate because you come from that community. Next time it's a different government and they will come for you. That's not what we want. And that is my perspective. What's yours? This is Patrick Dyer in Washington, D.C. Please like my page, The Weekly Dose. Comment, and all comments are welcome. And please have this discussion with your friend. Thank you.